Okay, this is the 74 Nova project I started 7 years ago. Everybody wants to know why it's not done yet. I'll kind of go through why it's not and whatnot. Just to show you, the front end has been tucked. The turn signals used to be located down there in the bumper, and in their place we've got laser cut SS383 pieces of steel, and behind them is the turn signal. So when you turn the turn signal on, it lights up the 383 SS, which is kind of its name. In the middle we've got the collector plate that my dad had on all of his cars, A, B, C, D, etc. Kind of a tribute to my dad. He's the one that got me into cars because he'd been in them his whole life. So we put his plate on the front of every one of our cars that we have. Got to get a hold of my brothers and sisters and see if I can find some more plates, because I've got 3 cars and 2 plates. Coming up, we changed out the grill itself. It is the factory grill. It's been painted white. We've put driving lights in place of where the turn signals used to be, and then along with that we've put in the halogen bulbs so they can be changed out. Here's where the fun begins. The fenders themselves are fiberglass. What I've done is take the steel inserts from those fiberglass fenders, cut them out of the steel fenders, and put them into the fiberglass fenders. Along with the reduction in spring, the fiberglass is also riveted to the steel to hold it in place. Definitely gives it a more rigid feel. It doesn't flap around like a lot of the guys have problems with fiberglass. The only other way to do it was to bond it right to the metal, and I really didn't want to do that. In case in the future something happens and I have to replace a fender, it's easy to cut out the rivets and put a new fender in there. My suggestion to everybody else in the world, if you're going to build a car for show, don't do this. I've been working on these fenders for a long time. They come really, really rough, so you have to take a lot of time to work them and to make sure that they're fitting correctly. One of the areas that I've changed out is here in the front. The inserts that come on all the Novas, on the headlight bezels, or on the headlight itself, I should say, around the bucket, is that this piece right here is a piece of steel. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and bolted the piece of steel in and then just coated the edge of it with the fiberglass body filler to fill in the gaps and everything to make it a little bit smoother. Also, I've taken the bumpers, and this is a really neat trick. You can collapse the shocks. This is the actual valance in between the bumper and the body. If you cut notches into it, it'll actually slide back along with the bumper. You just have to cut pop the shocks, cut the frame into a skeleton just to bolt on the bumper, and then bolt the bumper on. Real simple process. If you look through the pictures on the Facebook page, you can see how it was all done. Along with that, we've smoothed out the bumpers. There are no more body bolts. They're all gone, including all the jack mounts and everything else. They had little holes and everything. And the only issue that I ran into was I braze welded the bolts, the old bolts in place so that I could cut off the heads and then fill it with steel. And when I was sucking down on one of the bolts, I didn't realize I hadn't welded it strong enough, and it pulled right through the bumper. But these are the things you're going to run into as you're working on cars and you're learning this stuff. It's not going to be a first time thing and it's magic. It's going to take some work. This side is still being finished. As you can see, there are still remnants of smoothing out the fiberglass to make it fit and to make it all right. We've also got the fiberglass inserts inside fenders, and then of course the motor, but that's going to completely change. Along with the back there, I've started pulling some of the wiring out because mice got into it while it was in storage one time and just had a field day eating everything. Again, the hood is also fiberglass, reducing even more weight on the car. I think one of the things, this isn't for so much drag racing as it is to lighten the body up. They put a lot of weight in the front of these cars. I think we probably shaved off a good 600 pounds easy without even trying hard, by removing the steel and removing the 5-mile-an-hour bumpers and all that stuff. That stuff was heavy. When we took the bumpers off themselves, it took me and my son pull them off because they were so heavy. Now that they're lightened out, one person can actually take them off and put them on. But as you see, the fiberglass hood comes with the bottom of it unfinished, so that has to be skim coated and then sanded smooth before it can be painted. Otherwise you'll have a really rough look in the hood, and just not a good thing. A couple of the other issues you'll run into doing this with the car is alignment. There is supposed to be a piece of chrome trim that runs along, takes off right from this point and then runs along the hood to the other point. Now you'll notice, if you look real close, there's a huge gap there from body to body. That's one of the fun things you're going to have with fiberglass that you would not have with steel. Steel will line up with no problem. Also, notice your gap change all the way down the hood. That also is another thing to contend with. So this has got to be sanded out, and then this has got to be built up to reach the edge of this fender. The groove has got to be cut down farther, and so on. And then the other side, we've got a little more gap all along the whole thing. But when you do the side-to-side comparison where you check tape measure across and across, you'll realize this is not a square hood. Once again, inviting a ton more work to do on the fiberglass, along with the fender, which is almost to that point. The hood sticks up just a tiny bit across the lip. Definitely not a good thing. The back of it's pretty close. It's a little bit of tolerance. Again, the fiberglass here, you can see it's kind of rough. It has to be skim coated and then smoothed out. And if you're going to do the fiberglass thing, you might as well plan on doing this. Another thing they do is they round out all the edges. You can see I've started working on this side, but if you look at the corner, it's round instead of square. So that poses a whole new problem on its own. And then as far as the doors go, they were not even close when I initially put the fenders on. I actually took masking tape, put it across this side of the door, and then I fiberglassed across it, and then cut a groove into it. This will have to be, of course, built up in some of the places and sanded down in others, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot better than it was when it started. One of the other areas that we ran into with the car is during its lifetime, it was in a garage, and the ceiling fell in on the car, so it put a dent in here that had to be completely fixed. Back in the day, you would take a dent puller and pull up the hood, but with the interior out of it, it's a little bit easier to get in there, bring it up like it should be, and fix it. We've removed all the door locks. They are gone. And then also you'll notice there is no more trim or marker lights on the car. They've all been removed. The original door handles, I'm keeping them. I like the look of the original door handle. Kind of gives it that look from the early days that I'm looking for, but I just didn't want the locks. One other area you're going to run into is in this section here. You're going to have the old lead from the factory. You've got to deal with this because it's going to leave little indentations, as you see, in the body itself, and you've got to smooth those out. Once again, back here, we ran into some issues with the factory and the body, and then again, once again, we removed parking lights, or the marker lights, I guess you'd call them. Suspension had air shocks in it. They were pulled out, and we put some of those Gabriel coilover shocks, and it holds the car at a nice ride height. It does need to go down a couple of inches in the back and at least 4 in the front, because removing all that weight off the front of the car has raised it up. So that's got to be taken care of. We shot a little bit of the paint provided by Duplicolor, as you can see over there in the corner, there's a ton of it. They supplied all the paint when I was part of their garage, so definitely a big plus because it's going to save me a ton of money. I do like the color of the blue that they came up with. It is a very, very high contrast blue, as you can see. It's a beautiful color. The only thing I've done on the bumpers is I've taken and I've added some pearl into it so I can get that little pearl look into it. Walking around the back of the car, we see how the bumpers have been tucked in a little bit tighter. I know that you can go way up to them, up to the edge, and this will, if you take the spacers out, will tuck right up to the body. I just don't want it that close. Of course, some tape marks that'll be removed later. What we have also done is on the back of the car, we've added a 1970 Camaro tail panel and tail lights. I like the round look. My wife and I were talking, and we decided that the Novus square lights didn't go with the front of the car, so I went in and I started welding in the panels from a 70 Camaro. I bought a brand new tail panel and just started welding away. We've also added a center panel, piece of steel across that. I was going to use it for a gas fill neck, but that gas fill neck has got a new purpose, and I'll show you that later on. But definitely the way to go. We also had to cut down the bumper because the bumper, if you look at the top of it, it used to go straight across and would cover the tail lights. So we had to section that bumper down, along with sectioning 1.5 inches out of the middle to get it to kind of tuck up to a little bit better. All the lights are LED. The Camaro ones that I've got in there now are going to be replaced later on with a more modern LED style Camaro taillight that I found on Amazon. These are just to put into place so I can drive the car around, and I do show it as it is, and it does very well. It seems to win trophies. A couple of areas you got to be careful of is when you're in the trunk. Right now I'm putting in a fuel cell, so I've got some steel just basically holding together the lock system and the bottom of the new panel. Once the fuel cell or the gas tank's removed, I'll put the fuel cell in, and I'll put in panels to help support and increase the metal on the tail panel, just to make it complete and form in correctly, and then I'll seal it all off. I have not decided whether or not I'm going to bring stay with this bumper. I may end up going with a Camaro bumper. I just haven't figured it out yet, and we'll see how that goes in the future. Like I said, this project's been going on for 7 years, so there is no real hurry on it. Those of you who own cars and are on a budget and work for a living like I do, you're kind of restricted to the way things go with the job and with the income. The addition here is I've got no locks on the trunk. It's been smoothed out and they're gone. There's a pop button, and that's what I plan on putting inside the gas fill right now. Once I change over to fuel cell, that'll be where the button goes, and antenna for the alarm system. We do have all kinds of electronics that are going to go into it, mainly because the electronics of the day won't support it. So I've got a dual alarm system here, and the reason I went with duals is one of them's actually the alarm, and the other one's actually a trigger unit for power windows and all that kind of stuff. What I wanted to do was be able to set the alarm, have the doors lock, and the windows automatically go up. So that's part of this whole circuit board. And then of course we've got a new fuse panel that'll go into the back of the car. That'll supply the power for the stereo and all that kind of fun stuff, to provide what we need for the car's power. Right now she's running the old 42 amp alternator in it, and when I got done putting in the stereo, I realized that the 42 amp alternator, the stereo being played loud, would kill it in a matter of hours. So when you went to a car show and you had your stereo playing, you would kill the battery and that would be it. So we've made some additions. People are trying to figure this stuff out on the cheap is probably the hardest part. I probably paid $1,000 for the fiberglass. the engine's I've got a new crank for. There's some other stuff that I'm going to do with the engine. I haven't really gone all the way through, but I want to retain the factory engine that came with it. I do want to reduce the size of the master cylinder. I've got a master power switch with the battery that runs in the trunk. If you look, there's a pretty good wire running back there, so I'm not losing any power there. But like I said, the mice got into the wiring and pretty much ate the start circuit, so there's shorts in it and all that kind of stuff. It being a small block, one of the nice things about it is I ran across a junk S10, and I've got the entire drive unit sitting over in my my parts washer, waiting to be washed so that it can be sandblasted so that I can powder coat it. Almost everything that I've gotten or done, welding wise, bodywork wise, I've done with this $100 Home Depot welder. My sons make fun of me, but it's, if you're going to learn to weld, this the best thing to use. So definitely go grab one and just start welding stuff and see how it goes. I have gotten a little bit better, but I've still got a long way to go. So it's one of those things where if you're going to do it yourself, that's where I'm at with it. Is I like to do these things by myself. I like to do my own car work because every little detail that came on the car I came up with. I thought it was kind of cool. Yes, I've stolen some ideas from some of the TV shows. Like, I'm not the first person to smooth a bumper. I am the first person in my family to smooth a bumper. And like I said, I had to learn to weld the hard way. I know I learned how to gas weld years ago with braze and all that kind of fun stuff, but the new technology is pretty neat. I'd love a TIG welder, but those things are expensive. I can't afford it. I have a family to take care of, and I work for a living, so it's one of those things where it is what it is. So slowly but surely it will get done. I'm to the point right now where I've got to start prepping to do my jams and all that kind of fun stuff. I've got the car completely ripped apart inside. I've mocked up some bucket seats that I swiped out of a PT Cruiser that was being scrapped. I've got all the insides out. I had to reinforce the driver's side panel. I've got a double panel layered in there. It never had subframe connectors, so it started actually ripping the body, which I thought was pretty wild. So I've riveted in a second plate along with body, putting in seam sealer to make sure that sucker doesn't go anywhere, and then I'll put in some frame extensions, and that way I don't have to worry about the car trying to tear itself apart. I've got the interior of the car completely apart, as you can see, and ready for paint because I want to go ahead and paint the whole car the same color. That way, no matter where you look, you're going to see the blue instead of the way it was before, where it was blue on the outside, gold on the inside. But it kind of gives you an idea where the car's at right now, how it's been doing, and how far we're going. One of the other things I found on the roof was there was a factory repair, meaning that something fell out in the factory, and the factory actually fixed it there. It was pretty wild to see how they did it in the factory. It was kind of like piecework. Basically, get it fixed as quick as you can, and then send it away, and send it on farther down the line, and then yell at the guy later, kind of thing. I have added the trunk popper up in the trunk. It's pretty easy to install. I've got the wire running to a power source right now, just straight to the bumper. It'll be connected into the relay system as soon as the relay system is put in. But as you can see, the moldings and everything are off the side of the car, and the car is smoothed and ready for its final sealer, primer sealer, and then surfacer, and then of course your paint.